Hey, it's me, Riker. Today we're going to have a look at the brand new Graveborn hero, Bronn the Gravekeeper. Now, this hero wears plate-based gear, is part of the warrior class, and his primary role is to provide a significant amount of damage, buffs, and distraction for your allied heroes. So let's have a look at his skills. His ultimate ability, Wandering Reaper. Throughout the battle, Bronn steadily advances towards the edge of the battlefield, dealing normal attacks. So what he'll do is he'll gradually walk across the battlefield, as we can see in this animation over here, and once he reaches the edge, he'll be able to use his ultimate ability. Upon reaching the edge, which is the enemy side, he stops moving and transitions to ranged attacks, gaining access to his ultimate skill. Unleashing it summons nefarious souls, damaging all enemy heroes and terrifies them. So this Terrify is a 2-second stun, and he's also immune to control effects during this period. And as we can see, the damaging souls are these little butterflies or moths that will fly across the battlefield and continually impact and damage enemies. As we can see, these moths over here deal 250% of his normal attack damage. However, when he's moving across the battlefield, he'll be constantly dealing damage to enemies for 200%. So let's have a look at his next level up over here. Bronn grants allied heroes 250 points of dodge points and 100 magic points of suppression until he reaches the edge of the battlefield. So this is a temporary buff and it can be easily lost as soon as he reaches the edge of the field. Level 3. Upon reaching the edge of the battlefield, Bronn can immediately unleash his ultimate without consuming any energy. So this is a significant amount of damage that he can inflict instantly upon enemies. Let's look at his next ability, Dire Echo. Bronn's normal attacks are enhanced. Before he reaches the edge of the battlefield, each hit deals damage for 200% of his normal attack rating and knocks back enemies to both sides, stunning them for 2 seconds. Upon reaching the edge of the battlefield, his attacks will be converted into ranged attacks. And as we can see over here, ranged attacks inflict more damage the farther they travel, maxing out at 50%. So this hero is an excellent way to counter enemy invade based heroes due to how much damage you'll be inflicting upon them based on this increase to how far he can hit them away. Then level 2. When the same enemy hero blocks his path, Bronn's blows hit 15% harder with each strike. So this is simply an increase in amount of damage up to a maximum of 200%. His next level up, when the same enemy blocks his path, this is increased to 35% that it will hit them harder for, and this is increased all the way to 300% of total maximum hit damage that he can inflict upon the enemy. And the level 4, upon reaching the edge of the battlefield, his attacks inflict more damage the farther they travel. So this is from 50% all the way to 75%. So as we can see, he is extremely effective at countering invade-based heroes. His next ability, Shadow's Embrace. Upon reaching the edge of the battlefield, Bronn empowers all surviving allies, including himself, with ethereal force, enhancing their damage output up to 50%. So as we can see, he can enhance allied heroes by 30%. However, for each surviving allied hero that is still standing, the damage output that they will be able to inflict is 50%. This is a massive amount of damage, and this is irrespective of where the ally is standing, either in your half or in the enemy half. So he is excellent at countering, once again that I mentioned, and invade-based teams. The level 2. When dealing damage, allied heroes who acquire ethereal force, so this is this buff, will unleash additional damage for 150% of Bronn's attack rating, and this effect can be triggered once every 2 seconds. This effect will affect your entire team, and they will be able to trigger this as well. The level 3, when dealing damage, allied heroes who acquire ethereal force will unleash additional damage for 200%, and this effect trigger has been lowered to 1 second. So every single second of the battle's duration, your allies can be dealing a tremendous amount of damage to the enemy heroes. And the 30 engravings. Before reaching the edge of the battlefield, each instance of damage taken by Bronn won't exceed 15% of his max health. So this is additional survivability that he can gain when he unlocks this unique ability. Let's look at his next skill, Soul Devourer's Pact. Before reaching the edge of the battlefield and turning around, Bronn inflicts health loss on enemy heroes every 3 seconds, dealing damage for 250% of his attack rating, while healing any allied heroes for 20% of total lost health. So as we can see, this is an excellent amount of extra healing that he can provide at the beginning of battle. Level 2. When an enemy dies, Bronn absorbs their soul, permanently boosting his attack rating by 10% and defense rating by 10%, up to 3 stacks. So this is a total of 30% increase for attack and defense rating. Now the level 3 further boosts this power up all the way to 15% for both attack and defense, and it can be stacked up to 4 times. So this is 60% attack rating and 60% defense rating increase that he can gain for himself. And the level 4 upgrade, or 60 engravings, when granting allies ethereal force. So this is that team-wide increase in damage. Each absorbed soul further enhances the damage boost effect by 5%. So when an enemy hero dies, this will greatly benefit your team even further. So, and permanently increases physical pierce and magical pierce by 8 points. This effect can stack 5 times. So the 5 times is not really relevant, as that will mean that the entire enemy team is already dead. However, this ethereal force of 5% extra damage is a massive buff. So that 50% buff that he'll grant at the beginning, plus for every enemy that dies thereafter, can increase this all the way to 75% damage increase for your entire team. So let's have a look at his signature item over here, Unyielding Resolve. Now when you unlock the signature item before reaching the edge of the battlefield, Bronn's armor, so this is shield based effects, is increased by 15%, which doubles when his health drops below 40%. He's 10 unlocked. Now this further improves the effectiveness of the initial upgrade, so the 15% is increased to 20, and the threshold of health goes from 40 to 50%. The level 20, before reaching the edge of the battlefield, each time Bronn damages the same enemy blocking his path, their subsequent attacks against Bronn are weakened for 5 seconds, reducing the damage output for 25%. So this is excellent, especially against bosses, as he can essentially reduce the amount of incoming damage, allowing him to survive and allowing him to reach the edge and start benefiting your allies. And the 30 unlock, before reaching the edge of the battlefield, each time Bronn damages the same enemy blocking his path, any of their subsequent attacks against all allied heroes are weakened for 5 seconds, reducing the damage by 25%. So this is excellent, especially against burst-based bosses or enemies that can inflict a massive amount of damage in a short period of time. This will buff up your allies in a tremendous way. And the 40 signature item, before reaching the edge of the battlefield, upon taking fatal damage for the first time, Bronn becomes invincible and untargetable for 4 seconds and restores 60% of his max health. So this is a cheat death that he can gain for himself. So let's have a look at his furniture. Final Reprieve. The 3 out of 3. Upon reaching the edge of the battlefield, Bronn gains 20 points of buffer, which doubles when his health drops below 50%. And the 9 out of 9. Upon reaching the edge of the battlefield and casting Shadow's Embrace, after 8 seconds, or if there are fewer than 2 allied heroes remaining, Bronn dispels most buffs from all the surviving allies, and damage taken is reduced by 30%, and they gain 20 points of buffer for the rest of the battle. So as we can see, his kit is broken up into both while he's moving to the edge, which he gains a tremendous amount of damage reduction, healing, and various other buffs for his allies and for himself. And once he reaches the edge, then he goes into full power mode and tremendously buffs your allies with a lot of damage. So let's have a look at how he does in battle. So over here, we're going to have a look at a 240 level deficit of this particular team over here. Now, he'll work extremely well against anti-countering teams. Now, what this means is if the enemy has a lot of invade-based heroes, he'll be able to counter them through the damage reduction that he'll apply to his allies, and he'll constantly be distracting and healing your allies, as in this team over here. Now, as we can see, he took the most amount of damage for his team because he was constantly invading the enemy lines, and he also provided a massive amount of healing in addition to his allies as well. Now, once he gains his ranged attacks or he reaches the edge, this is when he becomes a massive damage dealer. So let's have a look at how he does. So when he walks onto battle, he'll slowly walk onto the enemy lines. So as we can see, he's pushing the enemies over here, and he's continuing dealing screen-wide AoE damage to the entire enemy team through his health lost effect. Now, as we can see, this enemy over here is blocking him, being Damon. However, once he reaches the edge, which he's slowly pushing there, then he'll gain his ranged abilities. So as we can see, now he has reached the edge, and he'll turn around. So as we can see, he's turned around, and now he's using his soul-based effect, and he managed to one-shot this Thorin as soon as he turned around. So this hero needs a bit of ramp-up time before he can gain the full effect of his kit over here. So what is the minimum investment that I would recommend into this allied hero? Now, I would highly recommend getting his 30 signature item. The reason for this will be a tremendous buff, especially when fighting bosses, as this will provide a massive amount of damage reduction for your entire team as soon as they get onto the battlefield. And he will also get various damage reduction effects based on the armor and various other effects as well. Now, I would also recommend getting his 9 out of 9 furniture, as this further provides additional buffs to himself and to your allies. So if you're fighting as extremely heavy invade-based enemies, this will be able to counter them, as he'll gain a lot of survivability, damage reduction, and immunity to debuffs, which he can provide for his teammates. Now, I would also recommend getting his 30 signature item. The reason for this allows him to gain additional amount of defensive stats, which will allow him to gain that extra bit of healing, damage, and survivability that he needs right at the beginning until he's able to transform into his damage form. Now, this hero is not a particularly good damage dealer. However, if he's placed in the correct team with the right allies, then he'll do extremely well, especially in stall-based teams, due to the amount of damage effectiveness buff that he can provide for his teammates. Now, I do not recommend getting his 60 engravings. The reason for this, as this provides no benefit to your allied heroes in events such as Nightmare Corridor, Cursed Realm, or bosses, as these 3 enemies cannot die, and this effect is only effective when the enemy can die. So this will be mainly used in campaign or in events or game modes such as Graveborn Tower.